All right, I am installing my clutch on my 351 here. I have put the flywheel on. The flywheel, as you probably know, will only line up one way. These bolts are not evenly spaced. They're basically keyed, so you can only get the bolts to align in one specific pattern. I'm using the ARP flywheel bolts. They are part number 100-2801, 7/16 inch bolts, and the torque spec on these is 75 pound-feet, and the instructions, ARP instructions, say to use blue Loctite and ARP assembly lube. Okay, so I have all the bolts on, and I'm going to torque them in pattern of 25, 50, 75 in a star pattern. Okay, this pilot bearing for the input shaft on the transmission is next. It goes into the end of the crankshaft there, so I'm going to press it in with a socket. Part number on the pilot bearing is right there. Also note that this pilot bearing, it's got cutouts on the back, and I assume that's for a puller to get behind it if you want to pull it out, but they don't seem to be very large enough slots. Okay, so I used a 1-inch socket with some medium taps with a medium-sized hammer, and it went in relatively easily. Took a fair number of whacks to get it in there, but it's in there. Here is the box for the clutch that's going in here, the clutch kit. This is a, I believe it's rated at 500 horsepower or 500 pound-feet of torque, or both, which is about what my engine makes. And I bought this about a year ago, and I don't know what I've done with the alignment tool, so I'm going to have to improvise. Probably will line this up with the transmission shaft. And there's a look at the pressure plate. Need to clean this off first. All right, so the bolts for this clutch assembly, these are 5/16 diameter bolts, so torque spec is 25 pound-feet. Okay, so the clutch assembly is going to line up on these 3 pins on the flywheel. And I have, by the way, I have used this flywheel for about 1,000 miles, so you see the discoloration, but I haven't had it resurfaced. I don't really think it needs it. So anyway, back to the clutch assembly. So these holes, the smaller diameter holes in here, this one, and this one are going to line up with those on the flywheel. So the clutch disc, the inner piece that's protruding there goes down. The side is more flat. And then put the 6 bolts in, torque them to 25 pound-feet for this diameter bolt. And I really should have one of those clutch alignment tools. In fact, I'm not even sure how this is going to work. If I can't find the tool, it's going to be difficult to line this up. All right, well, I was able to align the clutch disc with the outer circumference of the pressure plate here, and it looks to be pretty concentric. Looks to be pretty well lined up there, so I think I'm going to be able to line that up. All right, so I went searching for the alignment tool for about the 5th time, and was able to locate it, not with transmission parts, but in a box of, below a box of rocker arms. Here it is. So I have already positioned this by hand. That seems to be pretty much aligned with the pressure plate, and I'm going to try this alignment tool. So this is where the pilot goes, where the inside the pilot bearing, and the splines go. They're inside the center of the clutch disc. And my manual alignment was pretty much perfect. Alright, so the bolts on the outside here I have not tightened yet, but like I said, their torque spec for 5/16 bolt is 25 pound-feet. So we've got to torque all those bolts to spec. And all the clutch bolts I have torqued to spec 25 pound-feet. And the bell housing is going to go on next. Of course, it lines, it goes on these two dowels, one on the other side of the block. And I have already checked the runout of the bell housing relative to the crankshaft. Total runout was about 4.5 thousandths, and the spec according to my kit here that I have from Silver Sport Transmission. I have previously installed this transmission in the car and took it out, rebuilt a new engine. I'm putting it back in. Anyway, the runout spec is 5 thousandths, and I measured 4.5 thousandths total runout. So I do not need different dowels, offset dowels, to align this bell housing. And the bell housing is on. I just need to put in all of the 8 or however many bolts there are to tighten it down. Do that and be back in a minute. Alright, and it looks like there are 6 bolts that secure the bell housing to the block. Need to look up a torque spec on those. Alright, here's a couple shots of me putting the transmission to the bell housing. This did take me 2 attempts. The first attempt failed. I was able to get the input shaft into the pilot bearing, but I could not get the dowel pins all the way in. I would try to get them lined up, and the input shaft would fall back out of the pilot bearing, and I figured my problem was that the rear of the car was too low, so I had too much up angle on the car. So essentially I was trying to fight gravity and install the transmission going uphill. So after I figured that out, I pulled the transmission back down, jacked the rear of the car up to level it out, put the transmission back under the car, jacked it up, and it pretty much went right in without too much difficulty. I did have to do a little wiggling side to side and up and down to get the dowel pins on the transmission precisely lined up with the holes in the bell housing, but after that it slid right in. Altogether, it took me about a half hour on the second attempt from the time I slid it under the car till I had it in with bolts in the transmission. And any recommendations I have, the major recommendation would be to jack your car up as high as possible, assuming you're doing this from your back lying on the ground. Just jack it up as high as possible to get enough clearance to be able to do this. Other than that, it's kind of a pain, but it's not, you know, too terribly difficult. You should be able to do it. You can see here I do have a hydraulic throwout bearing. I don't have a clutch fork, so that's what the hydraulic lines are coming out of the bell housing. And yeah, that's all I've got, and thanks for watching.